Well, thank you, Saba, for that wonderful introduction. Nice to meet everybody. I'm Everett. I create designers at UXD Academy. It's been a passion of mine for about 3 years now, is when I founded the company. And ultimately, I want to show people that look like me that we can get into this space without a degree. So that's why I founded UXD Academy. But today I'm going to talk about sketching, whiteboarding, and wireframes in chaotic environments. Okay, this is really going to be good for I call soon-to-be designers or junior designers. So this should be great. So I'm here to talk about why sketching, whiteboarding, and wireframes are important in chaotic environments, or AKA your crazy ass job. You're going to be put in some really tough situations in your entry level position. So I want you to use these techniques to help you get out of jams and ultimately connect and align around business goals and what the user needs and deliver a great UX. So let's picture this scenario, right? You're at your desk, you're reading over this feature that you have to design, right? And all of a sudden a PM comes up behind you and asks you to join a meeting really quick. Now, FYI, whenever you get something like that, it's 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be really quick, okay? But for the sake of argument, let's just say it is. We get into a room and boom, there's 26 people in there and they're trying to get you up to speed on what the problem is. And then right after they finish explaining it to you, they ask you to solve it right there on the spot, right? Similar to like these design challenges that we do when applying for roles. So, but don't panic, all right? I got you. So people are visual, right? They need to see you work through a problem. That's where all of this stuff stems from, right? Too often though, companies focus on the pretty mock-ups, right? If you guys ever heard anything that I say or do, I kind of bring that up a lot. We need to focus on what the title says, user experience. Let's focus on that and not so much the UI of everything, okay? So, but you want everybody to agree on how your solution works for that user. So that scenario, hey, Everett, we have this issue. What do you think we should do, right? So I need everybody to agree on how this solution that I propose will work. And I could do that a number of different ways, right? So when you're thrown in a scenario like that, you want to make sure you're asking a shit ton of questions. Okay, you want to make sure that who is this for? All the different constraints. Okay, Dev, if you say that I can design in this way, would this be an issue if I present this solution? Yes, no. Okay, if there is, tell me a little bit more so I can find out. You have to dig a little bit deeper into what is being asked of you so that way you can properly solve it. But it's important to use paper, a whiteboard, or wireframes to align the entire room. I once heard in a talk that somebody said that UX designers are gatekeepers of bad ideas, which is very true. You're going to get a lot of bad ideas thrown at you, and you have to be able to quickly sift through those. No, that's not going to work because in this instance, blah, 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 or what you should use, if possible, data to back that up. So when you're asked to solve a quick problem, a big problem, or working on something new, please do not go straight to the computer and start marking shit up. Okay, that is one of the biggest mistakes. I've done it earlier on in my career, and it's one of the biggest mistakes I see soon-to-be designers, junior designers make all the time. They want to go, oh, what's the problem? Okay, cool. I start jumping into mock-ups. No, you haven't planned or worked through anything yet. You haven't really asked enough questions. The computer's there. Our standards are there. Let's focus on how this works. So I like to say sketching is whiteboarding solutions on paper, and whiteboarding is sketching solutions on the whiteboard. It's just a reverse. Sketching, whiteboarding is the same thing. Quick ideas on napkins, stickies, sketchbooks, really quick, okay? I want to emphasize really quick because a lot of people think they have to be able to draw in order to do this, and it's not the case. You do not, okay? But wireframes are like blueprint solutions in the context of software, okay? I don't know if anybody have seen actual blueprints. My first job was at a sort of a Kinko's, and so the biggest driver of business they had was people, contractors coming to get copies of blueprints, right? That's what wireframes are, okay? They're ideas using components from your library that will help solve a user's problem, okay? And what they are lines, boxes, and circles. Okay. I know people could draw lines, boxes, and circles. So again, you do not need to know how to draw. No, it is asking you to draw in 3D. Okay. If you could draw these lines, boxes, circles, then you could sketch or whiteboard. Okay. Now, if you need to, you could use rulers. There's a really good, or stencils. There's a company called UI Stencils. I bought a few myself. They're really cool. But when you get further along in your career, give me a whiteboard marker and a whiteboard or a piece of paper, and I'm good to go. The point is to quickly explain a solution to a problem, and I can't stress quickly enough. Okay, so does this person here look like somebody who's going to win an award for drawing? No. Sketches, okay? We all know exactly what this person is drawing, and I can easily communicate to people because, again, we are all visual. I need to see. You can tell me all day long, but I need to see what you're talking about. Whiteboarding, again, very much the same thing. It's usually a collaborative effort. A quick whiteboard session can help you in a crunch. Again, tapping me on the shoulder at my job before COVID, we had these really big roll-away whiteboards, and we would just roll them over. Hey, Everett, can I ask us about something? Sure, what's up? And we just turn over and start doing a quick whiteboarding session, and then I go on about my business designing that solution. So depending on who you ask, right, there are roughly two types of wireframes. Okay, you're going to hear terms like low, high fidelity. What's wild to me is now I'm hearing mid fidelity, but at the end of the day, they're wireframes, guys. And I want you to think of them in terms of your speed versus the time you're given. Okay, so how fast you will work will determine when you need, and when you need it done will determine what type of wireframe you will use. The level of chaos in your work environment will ultimately decide that shit for you. Okay. If people are coming in and everything's on fire coming in, then you may need to do a low fidelity or some sort, right? But be ready to adapt with your company. So low fidelity, also called skeleton, because a lot of the details are stripped and we're reduced to shapes. Okay, you won't see any placeholder text like title here or account, sign in. Like you're not going to see that. It's going to be literally reduced down to shades of gray shapes to signify buttons, content blocks, and layout options. So here goes an example right here, right? You don't see any text. You literally see shape, and we're using spacing. This grid system is here, but we know exactly what these content blocks are. And this is a low fidelity wireframe. You'll also see this too with software preloaded content. So if you pull out your phone and try and log on to LinkedIn, you're going to see these shapes kind of gradiate in different colors, and then all the images will show up. So you'll see that a lot in those instances. High fidelity, I like to think of these are like true blueprints of software that you're building, okay? But what's key is you want to annotate with these blueprints with interactions and call to actions for everybody in the room to understand. It's really critical. You're going to hear the term like stakeholder management, right? You need to be able to manage each stakeholder's expectations, be able to speak their language, and you can help do that with wireframes, okay? And they should be able to follow what's going on with very little explanation. So for example, now to be clear, this is how I do wireframes, okay? So usually I have the name of the flow up at the top, what task, step, or some sort of specific call out. And then here we can see it's high fidelity because you actually see a placeholder name, you see users, customers, vendors, like you actually see data that we would see in a mockup. And then I'm calling out and describing or annotating certain features that are in this page. And then I have page notes, and then usually 3 bullet points here to really give a quick overview of what's going on this page and what is the expected behavior. And what this does is it aligns product, design, and dev. And we could talk through every one of these. And what's really important too, when you're when you're creating these wireframes, you want to be anticipatory in the fact that you want to be able to answer. Someone in the room is going to ask, what happens if I click there? What happens if I click over here? Am I going to see X when I click that button there? You want to be able to anticipate that, and these blueprints will help you out with these annotations, okay? So again, depending on who you ask, I like to combine flows with my wireframes. I still call them wireframes. I've heard the term wire flows. Again, I don't really care. I just think it's important that you have both the happy path and alternate paths whenever you're detailing a certain feature or some functionality. It's really important to lay that out because, again, somebody's going to ask, what happens if I do this? What happens if blah, blah, blah? Well, cool. You know what? Let me zoom out or go to the next page. Here we are. I have all that down. So again, it also determines on your skill level and the speed in which you work. Now, I've gotten to the point now where I like to kick off working session meetings with my teams, cross-functional teams, and I will actually start wireframing live as I'm listening to requirements and I'm asking questions. But in most cases, what's acceptable is taking notes, obviously sketching on your own at home, and by the next meeting, you want to have some sort of wireframes up so that way we can talk through it and go through it. Everything is not set in stone. That's the beauty of the effect that wireframes has when everybody sees it. When they see this, they know, oh, he's not done yet. She's not done yet. They're not done yet. Let's work together on this. So that's why it's really important to emphasize using wireframes instead of jumping straight into mockups. So I have here, you know, sort of like the process. We went from sketch, we have wireframes. Obviously, they were high fidelity, and you see the transition between high fidelity and the mockup was so quick. All you see was a color change because they're high fidelity. Now, this is an ideal state. I'm not saying you can be able to do this every single job, every single role, because that is not the case. However, you want to do at least one of these if you can't do all three of these in a given project. So you want to at least sketch or you want to at least do a wireframe. One of the two is fine. Ideally, all three would look good and two would look good on your portfolio as well. But you want to at least do one of these things before you just start jumping into mockups. So some toolkits that you could use to create wireframes, there's a plethora out there. Hell, there are even UI kits that you can download, or if you're a Figma user in the community, there are several wireframing UI kits. Or you can build it from scratch in either one of these. That example that I showed that I use, my company, we use Envision Freehand. So I think Freehand is pretty cool. But there are no limits to the softwares and the options in which you can create these things. The point is just pick a software that you're comfortable with, that you can easily clarify an idea. That's what's the most important about having specific tools in your toolbox. You use what you're comfortable with in order for you to tell a story, okay? So again, people care about solutions in chaos. That's just, it is what it is. Hey, we're in a chaotic situation because of some problem, help us get out of it, right? So your job is to align everyone in the room on the user's story through your solution. It's really good as you're talking through your wireframe sketches, whiteboarding sessions, whatever, you want to speak in the context of the user you're solving for. So I am Saba, I'm going down and I'm doing this, and I want to be able to, you know, buy this item, but I can't because of something. You want to talk in terms of the user's perspective when you're going through your solution. And also take a breath. You got this. We know how, you know, we have a lot of pressures put on us. And, you know, again, everybody handles stress a little bit differently. So everything may seem chaotic in an environment, but if you really just take a breath and literally just fight for your clear understanding, that's probably, I would say, the number one thing. Fight for your understanding. Ask as many questions as possible. Do not feel like any question is a stupid one or a dumb one. None of that. Okay. Your job is to understand and to fix. Okay. So take a deep breath, use one of these three artifacts, be it sketching on paper, sketching on a whiteboard, or using wireframes. So just to recap, people are visual. You want to show more than tell, okay? Things can get lost in translation. Everybody's comes from different cultures, different ethnicities, and different dialects, and it may be hard to understand. So putting something visual in everybody's face so we can all align, it just makes it a lot easier for you guys. Um, and start with the sketch as much as possible, okay? It's like an analogy I give somebody. Um, you you don't Nobody will come to you and say, hey, what's your dream house, and then you just go straight to Home Depot buying wood and concrete and say, I'll show you in 3 months. No, like, you're going to pull up some paper and say, okay, this is how I want to do it, right? Picture this, right? You're telling a story. You're going to use whatever you can to be as visual as possible. And so that's what I like to think about using sketches. Again, we're not trying to be anything pixel perfect. Get you a sketchbook. I've gone through 3 or 4 in my career, but it's really, really simple. Start with sketches and keep it going, okay? Um, you want to align everyone with wireframes, okay? You want to be able to sift through certain ideas that may not work due to, some past experience, or the data shows, hey, this may not work. I think we need to design it in this way. But the goal is to get everybody, whether that's product, hell, even if marketing's in the room, dev, everyone needs to be aligned. You get that alignment with these wireframes to focus on functionality first, because what you don't want is something like churn or having to rework a bunch of features, because we skip straight past the building phase or the sketching and wireframing phase and went right into mockups. Now, granted, it all depends on your experience level as well. Maybe you've been in a position long enough where, I may not, I know exactly what I need to build really quickly. It may be an enhancement or something, but especially when you're working on something new, yeah, you want to be able to sketch or wireframe at some point. You want to be anticipatory again. Somebody's going to ask, what happens if I click this? What happens when I click here? Somebody's going to ask you that. It's going to happen. Okay. So don't feel stuck if you don't have the answer to that question. That's fine. You could take note of that and say, you know what, that's a great catch. I didn't think of that. So get them to expound a little bit more just to make sure you fully understand them. And then you repeat it back. So what I'm hearing is, we need to be able to do this. The user needs to be able to do the X, Y, and Z. So, okay, I think the best way to do that, knowing the mental model of the user, as well as what components we have in the library, I think we will be able to solve this problem in this way, whip out a sketch. Or let me come back tomorrow with an updated wireframe and we could talk through that. Okay. And again, make sure with your solutions that you're whiteboarding with, that you're telling a story specifically from the user's perspective. Okay. And, it's in our name, and what we do with user experience. Okay. So we have to put ourselves in their shoes, and speaking from their perspective when you're talking through your solutions will help you put yourself in their, in their perspective, and create that empathy. Another one of those buzzwords, but it's true. Really quick, thank you for having me, and I'm ready for some Q&A personally. Oh, really quick, sorry to gloss over this one. So I see Alita. Hey, Alita, how you doing? That's another another one of my interns there. We do UXD Academy has an apprenticeship program that I highly recommend. You guys just ask me about it. I'm proud to say that we're at a 32% placement rate, which, compared to some people that are, that are in the top dogs in the space, are roughly around 16. So I'm really excited about that, but I'm not satisfied. I want a much higher placement rate than that. So feel free to ask Saba, Alita here also, what they got out of just, being under my thumb for a little bit. And now I'm ready for Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That was really awesome. And I'm sure people got a lot of good notes that they took. We don't have any questions in the chat except for Someone's wondering how to like post a job description link for people that are in your program, like how to get in touch with you, maybe for, you know, if they have a job opening where they work.
Sure. So let me go back to the front. You could email me here, Everett at UXD. You know, I am a millennial, so my phone's in my hand. So I will definitely get it and direct you to someone on the team that can help you out. And usually I take a lot of the calls when it comes to, you know, people just inquiring about being in the program. But also, if you're interested in the job posting thing, definitely send it my way. I'm trying to get as many of my students employed as possible.
Awesome. Okay, here's one. How would you suggest handling pressure to to produce high fidelity mockups in the first round of reviews?
First round of reviews. So for me, it's hard to answer that question because I actually prefer the high fidelity because I know how people are. I've been in several situations where the low fidelity just didn't cut it. So I had to do high fidelity mockups. I think what helps out there is, you know, your workflow when it comes to producing the high fidelity. So if, you know, whether you're using Sketch, Figma, if one of the things that I try to employ, at least in my design systems, is like a wireframing kit, right? So I can just pull blocks. I need text, I need header, I need this, and it's all aligned with the you know, your brand standards and the tone and the messaging. So the high fidelity may not become an issue if you work those sort of you know, shortcuts into your workflow. So I think that's the best, you know, for me, is improve your workflow with adding you know, your common components in a high fidelity fashion instead of mockups, and that might help you out a lot.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Let's see, another one came in. Do you ever let customers do the sketching?
You know, it's a really good exercise, I think, to do that. One of the I don't know if you guys have seen, I think it's called Abstract of Design on Netflix, and there's a product design, UX design episode on there, talking about Ian Spalter at what is that damn app called? Instagram. And one of the things that he asks designers and clients to do is let's say, hey, draw this logo from memory, and you got 5 seconds, go. It's a really good interactive exercise just to see the mental models of everybody in the room. So I think that's very much, while it might be difficult for them to do actual wireframes, I still think it may be something to explore, because I like to involve the client, customer as early as often as possible, so that they get a sense for just what we do, and you can let me work if you have an insight into what I do. So I think that's a good idea.
Yep, cool. Let's see, question. Any recommendations for dummy text? Should I just focus on sample headings, subheadings, call to action buttons, etc.?
For that question, I think, again, your environment will dictate that. If you can walk into a meeting with your high fidelity wireframes and it says title here, user name here, you know, body copy, or subheader title, and then lorem ipsum for the text. If you can get away with that, then I like to make it as conversational as possible. So in terms that people actually understand, instead of putting like H1 or whatever, put like title text goes here, things like that. I think that will help out. And again, it really just depends on what your company is comfortable with seeing. Again, I tried low fidelity, they was not having that. So I knew to do high fidelity, and I used title here, go here, like I caption here. I used that as often as I could, but if I knew what the data was, I tried to plug it in.
Hi, Everett. This is Benetta. That was my question. Thanks, Saba. Okay, so this was my first time doing this. Like they said, do some lo-fi wireframes for this audio guide page that we're creating. So I did that. I did like a dozen sketches by hand. And then I created 3 in Figma just to give them an idea of what it would look like. So, you know, and that was hard enough for me to just do. I mean, it's not a difficult exercise, but it was challenging for me just to do it. And then I submitted that, and I didn't get a chance to talk about it. It wasn't a meeting or anything. So I just said, here's my Figma file. Take a look. And they said, okay, great. We got an idea of what you're thinking. So now put some text. And I think they want more than just like the placeholder, like the title, the headings, CTA, but I didn't get much direction. So I'm like, okay, I guess it's like open to whatever, you know, ideas I have.
I see what you're, okay, I see. So in that instance, when you put it that way, one of the things that I think some people don't understand also is you're your own PM when you're a designer at the job as well. You have to be assertive and a go-getter for information in a lot of instances. Because in some instances, you know, you're giving vague details. In a lot of instances too, they don't know the details. So you kind of have to nudge them or help them along in that sense. So what I would do is, you know, they're asking you for, okay, so you're asking me to put, you know, text or data in there that closely resembles. Well, can you get me the data? What would go here? These are my type of questions. What would go here? What is the call to action? Is it print? Is it buy? What is it? Oh, okay, so it's this. Like I have to ask those questions to get that out of people. So that's what I would recommend for you. It's say, hey, yeah, I understand. Yeah, no problem. We can input, you know, actual, you know, dummy data, but can you help me out with what the data points are? What goes here actually? Am I free to make up what that is? Or do you have the terminology for me? Ask those questions, get the information out of them because they have it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Sometimes it's like, well, I don't know what they want me to do. Maybe they're just pushing me to just come up with some creative ideas and they don't want to tell me. But sometimes I feel like I need a little more direction.
Yeah, no, and I totally get it. Unfortunately, in some instances, they may not know what to do. So a lot of instances, they pay you to solve the problem. So they're expecting you to come in and kind of facilitate that. So that's what I would definitely recommend, you know, be a little bit more assertive and ask them for the answers like, hey, what goes here? And okay, if you can't find out, who would be a good person to talk to find out that answer? Oh, it'll be Shirley over there in marketing. Okay, cool. Like you have to go get the information.
Right. Yes, thank you very much.
No problem.
Yeah, and I would definitely echo that too, because it does bring buy-in too. Like when you're making that decision, if you ask them what they think, then now they're a part of that decision that was made, and then they're gonna want to keep going that direction. So they're not going to say like, why'd you do that? Because then you're saying, because you told me that this was the thing, you know? So it's definitely a good approach.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I see one question in here that says, curious to know what documentation you create when you hand over your wireframes to developers, and do customers sign off on your wireframe? Okay, so couple things in there. So for me, we use Envision Freehand, right? And the cool thing about Envision Freehand is it's literally like a virtual whiteboard. And so I can just add stuff, draw stuff, tag people. But the most important thing is I can send that link out and people come in and view the work. I can, you know, cut off the permission for them to edit things. But they usually are using that for reference. Developers are really more important. Okay, once the mockup is created, them extracting the code for that. So again, with Envision, there's an inspect mode where developers typically operate in and getting all the attributes from design. So with the wireframes, there's the documentation is the wireframe because I annotate them and, you know, page notes and all that stuff. And I give them the link so they can see the wireframes. The other part of your question, do customers sign off on wireframes? Customers, No, well, it depends on what customer is in this case. Now, if we're talking about like me, my job, no, the customers don't sign off on anything. It's my product team, the dev team. Like we all do cross-functional collaboration, and then we have reviews, and we make sure that everybody from the dev, front end, back end dev is happy with what I designed. They say, yep, it can work. Product says, yep, that's exactly what the customer was looking for. They ultimately approve that, approve the work, approve the at each phase. So when they say, yep, this is exactly how we want at the wireframe phase, cool. Now I can go make my mock-ups. I bring the mock-ups. Hey guys, this is what we did. Let's go ahead and approve this. If there needs some tweaks that need to be made, we'll make them. But it's the product slash dev, you know, depending on who is leading the company, we're all approving the process.
Mm-hmm. And there's a couple questions above that one too. So there was one that,
yeah, let's see here.
Can you say a little more about customizing the UX artifacts depending on the stakeholders' expectations? Do you feel there are certain prototypes that generally resonate better with different stakeholder groups?
Okay, so a couple of things there. Could you say a little more about customizing the UX artifacts depending on the stakeholders' expectations? So yeah, let's say I am going into a meeting and they want me to speak to, you know, the CTO, the CIO, the CEO about, you know, what our design roadmap is and some of the latest things we're working on. I don't know, something like that, right? I know those people are in the C-suites, right? So 9 times out of 10, they speak in business terms. So what I want to do is I want to put a deck together that highlights, that quantifies impact. So because of this design, we reduced the click rate by 40%. Puts numbers, some impact behind what you're doing, because at the end of the day, they really don't give a shit. Like they don't care. They want to know what is the impact of what you're doing. And in a lot of instances, they don't know what the hell we do. So you need to put your presentation in terms that your stakeholders understand. With dev, okay, a lot of times they are, they're another one that's, more factual, absolute. You have to know who you're speaking to. So that's when I mean, customizing the artifacts to, depending on stakeholders' expectations. Speak the language of the people you're presenting to. Do you feel there are certain prototypes that generally resonate better? Obviously, if you can get as close to the real deal as possible, sure. In those cases, it often relies on some bit of coding, although there are a lot of prototyping tools out there that, don't require you to have code. I know Adobe XD has probably one of the better prototyping functionalities in their software. It looks very, very real to production quality applications. But ultimately, it's whatever you're comfortable with telling the best story, what tool you're comfortable with. People are doing some crazy things with Figma, with these new variants and interactions, like some crazy shit. If you're confident in that, hell, use Figma. But it really just, it's tomato type of deal with those sort of things. It's just whatever you're comfortable and your skill set is with that, you can tell the best story.
Yes, I love that. And then let's see, there's one. Would you say low fidelity is for thinking and brainstorming and high fidelity is for presenting to client?
Well, number one, sketching and whiteboarding is definitely the thinking and brainstorming piece, because it's rough. It's literally from your head to, a medium. So if you're using paper or the whiteboard, that's directly coming straight off the dome and right onto the page. That's the brainstorming piece. But and we got to be careful when it comes to, I don't know if you said customer or client, but let's say if I take the client route, I'm a freelance designer and I'm doing work for them. Yeah, I want to show them that's a little closer to polish. So I want to use like high fidelity in that instance. However, it doesn't mean that you can't use low fidelity. I would just again, people like to see as close to the real as possible. So with freelance work, yeah, I definitely would push towards high fidelity. But when it comes to being in the corporate design space, working for a company, be it agency or whatever, it really is about what allows you to tell the best story and what your, your stakeholders will, what they prefer.
Mhm. And then let's see. Hey Everett, I was asked at an interview once, if you had to focus solely on a UI related problem, what would your process be? What would your response be? I'm curious to know.
A UI related problem. Well, so I'm just gonna like make up a problem, I guess. So maybe I come onto a team and their UI, oh, let's think about you know what, let's actually put it a little bit closer to real. Um, the screw up that just recently happened with like Citibank, right? That everybody's seen the headline, the $500 million mistake or something like that, because the UI was so dated, it was so old, and it was hard to use. So that's more than a UI problem. And I would venture to say a lot of UI problems can also be because the UX isn't right. But if we're just taking a hypothetical and saying the UI problem, then you need to do, design audits and really revamp and rebuild their whole visual identity at the end of the day. But there's a process to do that. So one of the things I helped out with when I worked at 7-Eleven was their design system. And so I came in and I wanted to do like a quick design audit. Now, that's kind of like an oxymoron because a design audit, a true one, takes a long time. But again, you have to modify it based on your situation. But what I did was I asked every team member to send me their latest file, the latest file they worked on. And what I did was I did a design audit with all of those files. And I took note of every font that was used, every color that was used, every elevation, every card, literally everything. And, I found in there that there were over 76 different color variations, which is ridiculous. Over 140 font variations. Like, people were breaking components and just, doing shit because, again, speed, pressure. Like, hey, I need this out, I need this out. So if you don't have a team managing that system, it can become hectic. But in that instance, you want to do a design audit, say, hey, and then you make recommendations based off of, what everybody's using. Hey, you guys have 76 color combinations. I've narrowed it down. I think we can knock it down to about 13. You guys use 88 different fonts. I think we can get it down to 8. Like, here are the different sizes I think will work in these instances. So you have to do a deep dive and then provide a roadmap with that and say, okay, if I were to start, literally this be my project, what can be done soon, near, and then like future. I can get this part done. I start placing that in these different columns, and that way they can see, hey, to do this work, it's going to take roughly 6 months, X amount of months, whatever, but we can do it in a systematic approach.
Awesome.
Let's see.
Was that helpful, Sanchia?
Definitely. Thank you very much, Everett. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
no problem.
And
I see one here.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, what do you do if developers with all the best intentions improve your design to the extent you don't recognize your design? So I'm laughing at the word improve there because I've had developers screw my design up. And it happens so often. You literally design something one way and then you get into a demo where dev is demoing what you design. I'm like, that doesn't look like anything I did. Like, where'd that font come from? Like, but again, like, it's an iterative process for them too. So we have to be empathetic to that. But it's rare, I'd say, that a developer improved my design without me recognizing it. It's 9 times out of 10, they didn't do what the design called for, and we just got to catch them up.
Yeah. It's a great question. I think that's all the questions I've seen in chat, but if anybody wants to unmute and has a question, or if you want to write it in chat, definitely we can answer those questions as well. I had a question actually for you, which is the happy path.
Yeah,
I just want to learn more about that because I hadn't seen that before, and I thought that was a cool way to do it.
yeah. So the happy path, think about it as a user's journey from A to B without any problems. They literally do, like, if your app is like Pinterest, right? And the goal is to get them to pin to their board. From the start of pinning to it being posted, there were no issues. This is the route we want them to take. That's the happy path. Then there's the alternate route. Well, what if somebody in the middle of pinning, they decide to back out and then do this, or like those different routes? So that's where the alternate routes, or I just, say options a user can take. And then that kind of bleeds into a little bit of like edge cases. Well, those are like the really big, like what ifs, or they could be legitimate what ifs, but what ifs are like our alternate paths also. You have to be able to solve for that in your flows.
Awesome, thank you. And then, yeah, if no one else has questions, just want to ask you, how can people find you? Is it, besides your email, or is there like a website that we should put in, or, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
The podcast.
So, so I actually, you could follow, obviously, UXD Academy on Twitter and LinkedIn. You can go to www.uxd.academy to take a look at, our apprenticeship program for our product design program. And also my podcast. It's called The Design Plug, but it's spelled differently. I'm going to put it into the chat now. It's dsgn.plg, Design Plug, and it's on Apple and Spotify. But what you're getting with the Design Plug is a lot of candid conversation. I'm speaking to professionals from all different companies, different positions as well. I'm not just talking to designers. I talk to researchers. Pretty soon I'm going to be having developers on. Anybody you'd collaborate with in the real world, I speak to those people. And also what I do with my apprenticeship program, I host happy hours from my apprentices. And so I introduce them to my network and other people that I just met. And what we do is we take those happy hours and they become the episodes on the podcast as well. So in a lot of those episodes, you will hear Saba as well as some other students actually ask questions to our guests. So I highly recommend checking that out. You get a behind the scenes of, just what it's like being a product designer and switching careers. A lot of the people that I talk to come from a wide range of backgrounds. And that's what you'll see in this business anyways. We all come from some crazy, background. Like, it's just switching, but and learning those skills, but also networking and getting underneath somebody's wing to show you. Because I'm gonna be honest with you guys, when I came up, I was the only designer. I didn't even know Black designers existed until like 2 years ago. So, and unfortunately, the numbers are still really low, roughly 3% or less, if I'm not mistaken. So I had nobody to show me this shit. It was a lot of trial and error. But what I made a vow to myself, I'm going to send the elevator back down. Like, I'm going to teach people that look like me, but also that are underestimated, overlooked, who felt like I did, that my degree wasn't worth the debt. Like, I'm for all of those people, and I'm going to literally show you step by step how to break into this business, because it's not as hard as people like to make it. It is a lot of brain power, not going to lie to you, but there are tangible things you can do to break into this business. And my job is to show you what those are.
Awesome. I love it. You're getting a lot of thanks and appreciation and saying that people learned a lot. So yeah, thank you so much again for joining us. You definitely dropped a lot of knowledge on people. And yeah, just a lot of thank yous are coming in. So yeah,
Thank you guys.
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. You guys have a good one. All right.
All right, you too.
Thanks, everyone.